Welcome to the Valley of Death, where everything is spooky, but we keep things light. Continuing on with our extravaganza of cinematic universe flops, we now go ahead and continue on with Universal Studios trying to recreate the Universal monsters, with the next movie being Dracula Untold. Dracula Untold came out in 2014, and it is honestly, to me, kind of the most interesting out of the Universal Studio remakes. Not only is this a prequel to the story of Dracula, it is also inspired by actual historical aspects of Vlad the Impaler and story elements from Bram Stoker's Dracula. And instead of making Dracula a suave, scary villain, they make him into a sympathetic family man, which I guess is a very interesting aspect of the character, but whenever you watch any iteration of Dracula, did you ever think of him as a family man? Yeah, it's a very odd choice, to be completely honest. And then on top of that, it also lacks any scares or any horror elements to that matter, so what kind of movie were they thinking of when they were making this? To be honest, I actually really like this movie. There's a lot of things I legitimately really enjoy about the whole experience, and I think for the tone that they were going for, I think they kind of succeeded, but the movie is still, well, a drastic mess, and honestly, as much as I wish it was a return of the character, I understand why this isn't going to be appearing in any cinematic universe anytime soon, as much as I kind of wish that, as I said earlier. But yeah, so this is going to be a very interesting movie to talk about, but let's go ahead and watch Dracula Untold. We open up with a narration from Dracula's son over, honestly, some pretty cool still imagery of the story of Dracula, aka Vlad the Impaler.
I called him father, but the world would come to know him as Dracula.
Skip ahead many years later, and we are graced with the ever beautiful face of Luke Evans. Swoon. Luke Evans plays Dracula in this movie, and to be honest, I think it's a very odd choice for him to play Dracula. Not because I don't think he wouldn't be able to do the role well. I think he could play the creepy aspect up a little bit while also being incredibly suave and honestly very charming. Luke Evans is a very charming individual. But none of that is in this movie. Honestly, when I watch this movie, I almost think that the director just watched him play Bard in The Hobbit and said, yeah, this is what I want my Dracula to be. Dracula, as it turns out, winds up finding the remains of Turkish scouts on his lands, which apparently is not a good thing.
Belongs to a scout. One of Hamza Bey's men.
What the hell's a lone Turk doing out here?
Turkish scouts never travel alone. If there's one, there's more. And whatever they scout, they conquer.
Vlad and his men go to explore a cave, thinking that this is where the rest of the Turks may be, only to find something far more sinister. Two costume changes later. Seriously, guys, did you run out of video footage this fast? Vlad goes to a monk to find out what exactly attacked him.
The Roman mystics prophesied the coming of a great evil. A vampire.
Now here we come to one of the biggest issues with this movie. There is a ton of exposition in this movie, and sometimes it's done twice. It's way too much, and what little time we have where we could have decent character development, we instead get more and more exposition, or just scenes explaining things we already knew. Vlad tells the monk to keep the vampire's secret, and goes on to meet his family.
What an embrace, but no kiss.
Are we going to argue?
You're always leaving on me in my film. Something troubles you. What is it?
Only the impossible depth of your beauty. Puts the rest of the world to shame.
Pay no attention to your father, Ingress. Flattery is a cheap distraction from truth.
She knows all my tricks.
Now, personally, I really like Vlad's family. There is a lot of chemistry and cheesy lines, but everything comes off as authentic and ridiculously charming.
I've missed you.
I want to be hugged by Luke Evans. But once again, going back to the whole aspect that not only is this Dracula the most famous vampire of all time, but also technically the historical character of Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, nobody ever really thinks of, oh, was Dracula a nice family man? Because that's honestly what drives Vlad in this freaking movie. He is such the most kindest, wholesome family guy you could potentially imagine. And nobody ever thinks this whenever they think of Dracula. They always go, oh, man, that guy was crazy for impaling like thousands upon thousands of human beings on freaking stakes. Or they think, wow, that guy is a freaking creepy demonic vampire person. I mean, they never think, oh, was Dracula a good dad and family man? At least I don't think of those things. After all that lovey-dovey stuff, we cut to the Easter feast where everyone is having a wonderful time celebrating peace.
10 years of peace and prosperity ever since our prince came back to us. My old friend, here's to 20 more.
Only to have it cut short by a bunch of rude Turks accusing Vlad of killing their men.
The Turks have no enemies here.
Did you think we would not notice a battalion of our scouts missing?
I did not kill them.
As punishment, even though he didn't kill them, the Sultan brings back the practice of taking 1,000 boys to fight for his army.
Plucked as a child and raised to know no other life. They will kill without question and die without complaint.
Now, honestly, this is kind of where the story stops really making any sense, because we've had so much exposition and not a lot of character development or, just other stuff that there just seems to be a lot of story missing. For example, Vlad's wife mentions that he and the Sultan were practically brothers that he could easily negotiate something with. So Vlad goes to meet the Sultan, played by Dominic Cooper, who is basically a dick for the sake of being a dick.
I am owed 1,000 boys. Why have I not seen them?
Mehmet, my brother, I will grant you
I
anything
need
else.
soldiers, brother.
Vlad literally offers to fight for the Turks again, and even Mehmed says he'd love to fight alongside him, but says no, because he's a dick. Vlad is clearly far more worth than 1,000 boys simply because of fear of impalement from the enemy, so I don't understand Mehmed's reason behind this, other than the fact of the unconfirmed reason that Vlad killed his men, which you'd think that they might have to do a little bit more investigating on, but no. Hey Vlad, this might be a good time to mention the vampire in your freaking cave. What happened to these two being like brothers? I see no history between these two at all. It just makes Mehmed your stereotypical beard-twirling villain instead of something that could have been complex. He's so much a dick that he even tells Vlad to surrender his son.
What is one son? If you are virile, you will make plenty more.
Like a brother my ass! Vlad goes to give up his son, which, like I said, this whole scenario could have been set up so much better so that there was actual emotional weight, other than the fact that Vlad, the freaking Impaler, is an incredible good father.
I have to say, we're a little disappointed, frankly. I expected more resistance from you.
Really? That's what triggers him? This is what triggers him to literally start a whole war with the Turkish army. Okay, maybe Vlad the Impaler is a dick. Vlad alters the deal.
Pray I don't alter it any further.
And then after a pretty cool fight scene, he goes back to the cave to find the vampire, played by Charles freaking Dance. So I don't know if you noticed, but I really do have a problem with them using the actual Vlad the Impaler as a character in this movie. I know everyone always connects these two, but in the actual story of Dracula, he denounces that he is the Vlad Dracula. Now, if you want to make Dracula into a sympathetic character who turns to evil, that's fine, but using the historical Vlad Dracula as a kind-hearted family man who turned away from his evil deeds and even embraces evil to save his country, it's just so off! Especially because the guy was literally insane!
Then why spill blood, if not for the pleasure of it?
Because men do not fear swords. By putting one village to the stake, I spared 10 more. Sometimes the world no longer needs a hero. Sometimes what it needs is a monster.
Making him into Andy Griffith is just so wrong on so many levels! The Master Vampire explains the rules for becoming a vampire, that if he drinks blood before the sun rises after 3 days, that he will remain a vampire forever.
For I will be set free, having granted the darkness a worthy offering.
So you tied in a little bit of a weird biblical Jesus rising from the dead 3 days thing with Dracula? I mean, I know there's a lot of comparisons between Jesus and Dracula, especially if you watch freaking Dracula 2000, but let's just move on with the movie. Vlad drinks his blood and becomes a vampire, gaining all the vampire's powers, which, to be honest, they come off as pretty cool. He has super strength, can heal fast, has echo predator vision, and can turn into a bunch of bats. Another weird thing about this movie is the fact that instead of trying to make it into a horror movie, it seems that the director was trying to make more of a dark superhero movie, or a dark fantasy movie, rather than it being, well, a straight-up horror movie like what Dracula is supposed to be. However, he hears his castle is under attack and returns home to fight.
We will not be defeated! They brought war to our land! And they will pay dearly for it.
Which this leads to, honestly, an incredibly awesome fight sequence. You know what it's time for. Monster Rampage! I honestly love this sequence. It shows his intensity, his powers, and just so much cool stuff, including a pretty awesome shot where we see the reflection of Vlad killing the Turks through a sword that was impaled through a guy as he's falling down. I love this freaking action sequence so much. I mean, there's more to come. Trust me. But it's just so hard for me to hate this movie. There are honestly a lot of honestly incredible stuff about this movie, but the thing is, this isn't Dracula. That's my biggest problem with it. This is freaking, I don't know, Captain Transylvania. After that incredible fight sequence, Vlad leads his people away to a monastery where he is starting to feel the hunger for human blood. Vlad goes out for some air as, well, you need to after making out with your wife, where he meets this guy, and wait, who the hell are you?
They say the one who escaped the mountain hides behind the face of a man.
Oh, that one guy from the beginning. No, seriously, who are you? Well, I guess he's going to play a bigger role now, especially since he's trying to tempt Vlad, or you can just not show up until the end of the movie. This is actually another problem I have with this movie, and it's the fact that we are introduced to so many characters that we are given the impression that we're going to be spending time with some of these characters or getting to know them, their intentions, or something, and yet nothing is done with them. We're given the impression that they are going to be major roles in this movie, yet they are given so little depth or just around for a small period that it truly doesn't even matter that they show up. Vlad resists this random dude's tempting offer, where the next morning Vlad stays behind as he can't go out in the sun. The rest of the group leave, and a small group of the Turks catch them at night, where we get another monster rampage! Not as cool as the first one, but it'll do. Vlad loses his person, I guess.
Oh no! Anyway, last week...
News of Vlad becoming a vampire reaches the Sultan, where his men are basically refusing to go after him. So I'm sure the Sultan's gonna give an inspiring speech, you know, pump his troops up, you know, to fight for their country, or...
Remember when you first joined my army?
Just blindfolds them. What? How is this going to change their minds about going after Vlad? And hell no, these guys are not walking in perfect unison. This is actually what's happening. Why are we doing this? Vlad is making sure people are prepping for battle when the monk from earlier notices he's avoiding the sunlight. So, knowing that Vlad hasn't drank any blood and that all he's done is stuff to save his people, clearly he's going to have a polite conversation or just piss him off by letting him get burned alive and have his people turn against him. Good job!
This is your loyalty, your gratitude. You are alive because of me, because of what I did to save you.
Now, once again, this is a scene that I actually really like, and it could have gone somewhere, but because of how they've painted Vlad as a person, this scene just doesn't work. If the movie was a little bit longer and we were able to not only see Vlad really getting tempted by his vampirism, but also his old habits, this scene I think would have been a bit more compelling. But because he's such a kind and understanding character, this scene seems so off, and moments later he's back to being like, literally the best dad and husband ever.
Why think separately of this life and the next?
When one is born from the last.
There are no signs of this guy becoming the scariest horror villain of all time. As the Turks show up, Vlad finds his winged friends in the belfry, where, once again, we get what I would call a freaking amazing monster rampage moment, where he literally turns a giant mass of bats into a freaking fist. I hate how much I love this movie. This scene is the epitome of awesome when it comes to an epic superhero vampire. This is something I would love to see in, I don't know, just a dark superhero fantasy movie or something. Maybe something like this would have originally worked in a movie like, oh, I don't know, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, if that movie wasn't awful. But once again, we are dealing with the character of Dracula, and as much as I love these freaking monstrous rampage scenes in this movie, it's not Dracula. I mean, I could argue you might have been able to go ahead and fit these awesome sequences into a Dracula movie. Maybe. Especially if you were trying to go with the more action route. But the movie still needs to be a lot more compelling. And heck, try to actually make the bloody thing scary. This is just an incredibly awe-inspiring, awesome fight sequence. This is not, well, scary. Vlad goes to confront Mehmed, only to find out he's been tricked to leave the castle with his wife and son unprotected. Vlad goes off to save his wife and son, only to be too late as his wife falls off the tower. mention how much I love some of the visuals in this movie? His wife is still alive? Heck no, she's a freaking pancake! Marina tells Vlad to drink her blood so that he can fully become a vampire so he can save their son and the kingdom, which then allows the master vampire the ability to leave his cave.
I hate how much I love this movie!
Vlad gets his super suit. I know it's just armor, but this is basically a superhero movie, so it's a super suit. We get another pretty freaking epic moment, and did I mention how much I love the visuals in this movie? Where Vlad's new vampire army comes and destroy the Turks. Vlad then goes to have his hero fight with Mehmed.
I understand you have a weakness for silver.
Wait, where did you learn that? We get, honestly, another pretty awesome fight scene where Mehmed uses a bunch of silver coins to his advantage, throws it in his face, he has a silver sword, and honestly, I just really love a lot of the aspects of this movie. Once again, if this was just the character of Dracula, I really think this movie could have worked. But the thing is that once again, you go with the whole idea of making him not only Vlad the Impaler, but also Dracula. Both ridiculously evil characters. If you wanted to go ahead and try and put a spin on Dracula being like a fallen hero who turns evil, you know, I could get behind that. But you cannot try to make a legitimate historical figure and one of the most evil literary characters of all time into such a kind-hearted, sympathetic character.
If I put a stake through your heart,
It will kill you.
like any other man, a fitting death. The Lord.
Impaler.
Oh, so that's why vampires don't like to get staked. Wait, what? Vlad kills Mehmed, finally embracing his true name.
My name is Dracula, son of the devil.
I hate how much I love this movie! After defeating the Sultan, Dracula leaves with his son, where, guy who thinks he's important tells Dracula in order to be truly free, they have to kill his son. Do you not even realize the one reason why Dracula became a vampire to begin with? Drac says, screw you, and impales him, where the monk from earlier comes to take his son away.
Do not leave his side. No, I will always love you.
Vlad then moves the clouds, revealing the sun, burning himself and his followers. Hope you enjoyed being vampires for this short amount of time. Now smell you later! Wait, why didn't he turn into a big pile of ash? Well, that's very inconsistent. We end the movie with another narration from his son.
Prince Vlad Dracula was a hero.
I'm pretty sure all of history would disagree with you, kid. Random gypsy dude finds Dracula and gives him his blood, bringing him back to life. Now, this scene was actually filmed at the last minute because it was told that this movie was actually supposed to be the start of Universal Studios' cinematic universe, the Dark Universe, bringing back the old Universal monsters. This movie would have been 10 times better to start the Dark Universe than the atrocity that was the Tom Cruise Mummy movie. Vlad walks around modern London where he finds a woman who looks like his wife.
I think separately of this life and the next, when one is born from the last.
It's my favorite poem.
It speaks to you of yearning, of one soul pleading for another.
I'm Mina.
Vlad.
wait a sec. You're pulling this crap from the Mummy movies.
My love has lasted longer than the temples of our gods. No man ever suffered as I did for you.
I think separately of this life and the next, when one is born from the last.
It's my favorite poem.
Ankh's an Amen, but the rest you may not know. Not until you are about to pass through the great night of terror and triumph. Until you are ready to face moments of horror for an eternity of love. Until I send back your spirit that has wandered through so many forms and so many ages.
It speaks to you of yearning, of one soul pleading for another.
I'm Mina.
Vlad.
This is the wrong movie to be pulling this kind of crap with! Dracula is literally the epitome of Satan! How could you get this character so freaking wrong? He is not a character who just is a kind-hearted, loving father and just wants his wife back. He is literally evil incarnate! And of course, we end with this little cliffhanger for a sequel that will probably never happen.
Let the games begin.
So that was Dracula Untold, and I hate how much I love this movie. But it gets so much wrong with the character of Dracula. Whenever I watch this movie, I almost look at it as a guilty pleasure. I think Luke Evans is literally the perfect person to play Dracula, if the character was done right. And even in this movie, I still think he's really good. I think he's a great father-like figure, he's a great husband, and there's a lot of things that he honestly gets really right. And then on top of that, he really shows the ferocity and intensity of being an overpowered vampire. It is really, really cool, and he does a really great job. This just isn't Dracula, and honestly, I think that's the biggest problem that people had with this movie. And I can get behind that. Would I have rather had this movie the beginning of the Dark Universe than The Mummy? Oh, absolutely, 100%. Even with all the things this movie got wrong, I still think that we got a decent introduction to the character of Dracula, and then something that could have led on to something that could have been really cool with starting to begin a cinematic universe. There are much better Dracula movies out there, but like I said, I really love this movie as a dark fantasy superhero movie. And if that's something that you're looking for, I highly recommend this movie. The action sequences are great, Luke Evans is a fantastic actor in this movie, and there's just a lot of things that overall I do love about it. It's just, this is not the character of Dracula. And if you're looking for a more authentic experience for, well, Dracula, you might want to look for other movies to sink your teeth into. Man, I really wish Luke Evans was actually coming back as the character of Dracula in the Dark Universe. I mean, who knows, maybe he might. He's still really open to coming back as Dracula, and who knows, maybe he might. I could see him working under Blumhouse, to be completely honest, but I don't know. We'll just have to see where, well, Blumhouse decides to go with the rest of these monster movies, especially after The Wolfman and whatnot. But, oh, man, we're already 2 movies into this dark universe, and I honestly don't know what to think so far. But, well, come Monday, we're exploring the actual first and last movie in the Dark Universe with The Mummy. Can't wait to talk about it. This has been the Valley of Death, where everything is spooky, but we keep things light. I'll see you guys on Monday.